I'll tell you a quick story. I went out to Hawaii on very short notice, and I fought Homer Moore. Remember Homer Moore?
Absolutely.
Talked about him on the show. We actually falsely convicted him.
You did?
Yeah, Homer got jammed up in some murder charge, and I said that he was away. He did not. He was acquitted of that. So there, we've corrected that statement from a few shows ago. But I went out to Hawaii. I fought Homer Moore, and I lost the fight, and that moved me to 9-2. I'd lost to Forrest Griffin.
I didn't know you lost to Homer Moore.
Yeah, I lost to Forrest Griffin, and I lose this fight to Homer Moore. And I felt like I beat Homer. I felt like I beat him pretty soundly, but he did have position. When it came to takedowns, he was getting them. And he wasn't doing anything with them, but he was getting positions, and I kind of followed that rule myself. So when the judges gave it to him, I just walked off. But I remember being in the back with Robert Follis and saying, I'm done. And it wasn't because I wanted to quit or what, but the UFC, the way it worked, man, your record was everything. They didn't look at who you fought. There was guys that were slipping through the cracks because they were 10-0, and it's like, yeah, but you fought 10 bums, and I didn't run my career like that. I fought anybody at any time, but there's no consideration given to that. It's just simply, did you win or did you not? And I was cognizant of this process, so I was in the back, and that was it. I was done because I just thought, it was so hard to get fights too. I got to remind you of the time frame back then. There was not very many shows. UFC's putting out 6 shows a year. There was no Bellator. Pride is in a totally different continent, and they're doing 5 shows a year. There just wasn't a lot of opportunity. To even have those 12 fights that I had, or 11 fights, was an accomplishment. But coming off a loss to Homer Moore, who had just been released from the UFC, I'm not going to lose to Homer and then get picked up. Just wasn't going to work that way. Logically, I'm done. And the years it would take to rectify that, to get on a 5 or 6 win streak, that would take years and years of pandering and politicking and getting on every show and then getting the training and getting the wins. And I just remember thinking, I'm done. And I was telling Robert, this is the end of the road. And Robert's like, he was talking me off the plank, and I wasn't making a quick decision. I didn't feel like I was. I thought I was being very logical with what I just said to you right now. And BJ Penn was the promoter of the show. It was his brother, but, they're using BJ's name. And BJ, there was no commissions back then. It was whatever the event organizer said goes. And BJ's dad comes in the back, and he says, that was the wrong decision, and unlike every other show that does nothing about it and sends you home, we're going to fix it. In fact, we already have, you win. So the judges rendered a decision. I believe it was a split decision. Really not relevant to the story. They raised Homer's hand. This was the main event. The show is now over. We're in the back. We're changing our clothes, getting ready to get paid and go back to Oregon. And we're in Hawaii. And BJ's dad comes in the back and says, no, it's already changed. The official win is you. So I'm thinking, well, you can't do that. I've never heard of such a thing. And Homer's not going to stand for that. Well, Homer did. Homer agreed with them. He's like, yeah, I was a little surprised they gave it to me anyway. And that was that. I had won, but the relevance to this whole story is the second. So I'm done. My career's over. I'm in the same spot doing the same thing with the same skill set. A guy walks in the room, says one line, which is, you win. We've overturned the decision. And now I'm back on board. So, the point is, it's like, wait a minute, I haven't gotten any better or any worse in the last 5 seconds, but you just changed my mindset completely. And I think that Ryan's going through a little bit of that. He's looking at it going, hey, I just lost on a small show to a guy. If I'm losing to a guy on a small show, how am I going to get in a big show? But what he doesn't realize, a lot of it because of his youth, what he doesn't realize is Ben Egley could be in the big shows right now, and so could he. That was a UFC caliber fight with UFC caliber opponents. That was a Bellator level fight with Bellator caliber opponents. The fact is, it just happened to be at King of the Cage in a smaller event. The quality's the same. The first guy I ever fought is Trevor Prangley. We fought at the Roseland in front of 80 people for nothing. 0. It was an amateur fight. We rematched in the UFC, and Trevor belonged there. He went on, became the Bodog World Champion, won a whole bunch of fights in the UFC. I went on, had my career, but what we didn't realize at that time at the Roseland in front of 80 people getting nothing, we thought that's who we were. We thought we deserved to be at the Roseland in front of 80 people getting nothing. We didn't realize, no, man, the competition here is so thick. This fight could have happened anywhere. And that's just a little bit where Ryan's at. He's just not understanding, man, that was an amazing performance against an amazing opponent, and you won over 15 minutes of that contest for a title just because it was on a smaller show. You need to see what we're all seeing. What we're seeing there is a great athlete who did a great job with a great skill set that is headed places. He's also good looking, he's young, and he's got a bit of a gimmick. He's got everything a promoter's looking for. And I know he's listening to this right now, but he needs to hear this.
Well, to speak on this real quick is you've told me how good he is. You've told me over and over and over again. Now, I've only had the opportunity to watch him in sparring, and you never know what sparring is. I can tell you anybody on this planet that watched me spar the other night would know I suck. But as it goes to Ryan, I also know when somebody can fight. I was blown away how good he is. He did so many things that you can't do when you're sparring. You can't throw elbows. You can't throw hard hooks. He was great. He was phenomenal. And Ryan, you just need to suck it up and get your ass back to practice. Don't wait. Chael just laid a friggin' egg, and the first thing he did was go back to practice. So you need to be there too, young man.
Yeah, one doesn't speak to the other. You know, a guy's skills, they don't always get shown. You know, I remember I lost a match in high school, and I don't mean to keep telling my stories, but I'm trying to tell my stories to motivate Ryan. And he's such a stud, and it's so clear from the outside how good he is, right? How handsome he is, how many fans he brings. The fact that he's one of the few fighters that has a gimmick with the Walker Mania and the whole bit he does. It's so clear on the outside, but when you're him, it's hard to see. You know, it's hard to see. We see fighters all the time, man. They fall into drugs. They fall into alcohol. All the way to the greats, the Sugar Ray Leonards, when things aren't going their way in the ring. And it's just really weird. It's like, no, you've done some really great things. You've got some laurels to go back on. But those few moments don't always work out. I got done wrestling Doug Lee for the state championship my senior year, and I lost the match. And Chuck Kearney went on to be my coach, University of Oregon, came in the back, and he presented a scholarship offer. And I'm sitting on my butt in the back of the Child Center. I'm done. It's my last match of my career in high school, and he gave me an offer. And I remember looking up from where I was sitting. He was bent down. He had his hands on his knees. I'm on the floor. And I just remember looking at him. I don't know if I said these words or if I just looked at him with, why would you offer him? I just got beat. And he said, Chael, I would never judge a guy's abilities on 6 minutes, of wrestling. And I mean, it changed me. You know, there's times when you're down, you need somebody to pick you up. You're not strong enough to pick yourself up. And I remember when he said it, thinking, yeah, he's right. That was just 6 minutes. You know, I've wrestled since I was 9 years old, every day, well over 1,000 matches. And, you know, he was a recruit. He knew what he was looking for. Doug Lee went on to win 3 Pac-10 championships, be in the NCAA semifinals in double overtime, All-American, big stud. And he goes, no, I'll take you both. And he did. He recruited Doug too. We went on to be teammates. But the point that I'm making is you never fully know what you're doing when you're the one in it. Jim Grunwald is a great example. Jim Grunwald never won a district championship, never won a state championship, never won a national championship, went on and was the United States Olympian. Well, what had happened is 15 miles away, just purely by chance, where his parents lived in relation to where Dennis Hall's parents lived, put him in the same districts, the same state, and the same nationals. Dennis Hall is one of the greatest to have ever done it, period. World champion, Olympic silver medalist. They happen to live next to each other, happen to choose the same sport, and happen to weigh the same thing. So Grunwald went his whole life thinking, I'm a backup, I'm a JV guy. You just never know. And in Ryan's spot, it's so clear from the outside, Egley's going to get picked up, so are you. And just because Egley beat you doesn't mean he's going to get picked up first. You might have the contacts that make the call for you first. You could end up in Bellator, in the Octagon, over at the UFC, before Egley does. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. When I lost to Tito, that hurt. There was no part of me that thought I was going to lose to Tito, and I knew where Tito stood. I knew full well this is the guy nobody loses to. If I lose to Tito, I'm going to have a real hard conversation with myself that I don't want to have. I used those exact words. I had dinner with my buddy Justin. He said, how you feeling? I told him that. I said, man, I fully get the score here. And if you lose to Tito Ortiz, it's not great. But I knew how I felt going into that fight. I knew how I felt in the room. I knew how hard I was running. I knew what I could lift. I mean, some of those things are verifiable. You look at the numbers on the side of the plates. You look at the stopwatch after the runs. There are some things where you do know where you stand. And there were so many things that happened that night with being out for a few years and going in and just whatever happened, it all culminated. I got put in a bad position. I lost the fight. Fair and square. Fair fight. Completely fair. Joel, it was so bad. My performance was so bad. I had people out there thinking I threw the fight because they didn't have any other way to explain it. And I'm sitting at it going, listen, this is a disaster. A main event, record setting at the box office for the company, record setting over on Spike TV. We're beginning of the year. I'll fully admit we're only into February here, but nobody's touched it. And there's been plenty of shows on free TV. Nobody's touched our number. And you lay an egg. So now you've got two choices, man. Do you sit around and feel sorry for yourself like I started to do? I've done the same thing that Ryan's doing, whether it was in Hawaii after Homer Moore or in the Child Center after a high school wrestling match. Or do you get back up and go, wait a minute, that's not a depiction of my skills. Am I being delusional? Am I being one of those guys clinging to career? Or did I really have better moments and I just wasn't able to show them then? And that's the spot that you get put in. And that's really what fighting is about. It's about moving forward when you're down. It's about being tough and picking yourself back up. It's about, when people are saying bad things about you, do you believe it? And the same goes the other way. When people are saying good things about you, do you believe that? It's great to read the things they say about you, Joel, good or bad. It's never okay to believe them. And I've seen people fall so far because they got hooked to headlines. They got hooked to nice things that people were saying or a stranger patting them on the back. It's like, man, none of this has to do with what your career is as an athlete. It has to do with how hard are you willing to work, what are you willing to sacrifice, and can you move forward when the chips are down? And that's what it's really about. And that's the spot that Ryan's finding himself right now. But I'm looking at Ryan from the outside. I'm going, dude, you're amazing. You're working body shots. You're pushing the pace. You're controlling the ring. You're dealing with the crowd. You're dealing with the lights. You're dealing with being on TV. You're dealing with a 5-round situation. There is not very many people walking this planet that are in the 5-round club. Not many guys walk into an atmosphere that is scheduled for 5 rounds, and even fewer actually make it. Usually in a 5-round fight, there is a finish, and it's not because one guy is better than the other. It's because one guy flicks it, and he doesn't want to be out there because it's too goddamn long. I don't agree with them going to 5 rounds. I don't know why the sport ever went to 5 rounds, but here we are. Ryan jumps into that situation. I mean, the courage of courage. He puts it all on the line. He just can't be down about himself. He just can't. I know that he is, but he just can't. And after I laid that egg against Tito to finish this thought, Hoist Gracie comes in the locker room and he says, let it go right now. Let this go. And Hoist isn't my guy. Randy is. Randy came in the locker room before the fight, but I didn't see him afterwards. Hoist comes in the locker room and he says, let it go right now. And don't ever look back. Get back to your skills, get back into the gym, listen to your coaches, work with your teammates, and move forward. And that was it. He'd reinforced something that I already know, that I'm preaching right now to somebody else, but I'm preaching it because I'm in the right spot. I've been through it. And the only way through it sometimes, when the chips are really down, there's no way around it. You've got to go forward. You got to go through it. And that's the spot that he's in, and that's what I want him to do, and I hope that he's at practice tonight. And whether he works out or he just watches the practice, he needs to stay in the habit. Every night you get in the car, you get your gear, you show up.